Our speaker, we are so honored to have her, Claire Wasserman, founder and author of an organization and a book that's called Ladies Get Paid. The topic today is the LLC of me, how to run your job search like an entrepreneur. And let me tell you why she knows whereof she speaks. She is the founder, as I said, and the author of Ladies Get Paid, a career and leadership development company that has helped tens of thousands of women advocate for themselves and advance their careers. And her target audience is women, but I have known men who have come to her meetings, who study her newsletter, who have read her book, and who have prospered as a result as well. She is the author of the best-selling book, Ladies Get Paid, the ultimate guide to breaking barriers, owning your worth, and taking command of your career, published through Simon and Schuster. She has spoken at NASA, Harvard Business School, the United Nations, get down, and companies including Google, Nike, Amazon, and Spotify. Her work has been featured in the New York Times, Forbes, Fast Company, and Harvard Business Review. With a community of over 50,000 newsletter subscribers and 168,000 social media followers, Claire is known for her no BS approach to career development that combines tactical strategy with deeper work on self-worth and confidence. She holds a master's certificate in financial psychology and behavioral finance and has developed somatic-based coaching methodologies that help people transform their relationship with work and money. She lives in LA with her wife and twins. I'd love to hear more about them. I have twins myself. So let's give a very warm welcome to Claire Wasserman.
Oh, Kathy, now it needs to be a whole conversation around twins and parenting twins. So, oh, we are a special bunch. Thank you so much for having me. Let me go ahead and share my screen. And by the way, hoping everybody sticks around for the full hour, I will share my slides with you all. Feel free, though, by the way, you can take screenshots. You can share it on social. It's a great way to, help others. And I'll comment and we'll boost each other's engagement on social. So, it's always a little bit odd to hear your bio read back to you. I'm going to tell you well, you heard the highlight reel. I'm going to also tell you about the lowlights, the obstacles that I face that have helped shape what I'm about to teach you today, which it's all about how to run your job search like an entrepreneur. And a lot of the crises that I have faced in my career and my business is what has shown me how do you be resilient during an unstable time, which for many of us who are job seekers, this can feel like an existential crisis, a financial crisis, a logistical crisis. Even what do you do when you wake up in the morning if you don't have structure with your day? Or if you have a full-time job while also looking for work, that's like having two full-time jobs. So just to validate everybody here, if you are feeling like you are being pulled in many directions, I see you, I feel you, I have been you, and enough about me. Let's talk about job seekers. Like Kathy mentioned, I have a large community. Something I love about that is I get to collect data from them and what job seekers are saying. I'm hearing over and over again. So you tell me in the comments, does this resonate with you? Feeling like I don't have value anymore, like I'm submitting into a black hole. Constant rejection, right? How do you not take this stuff personally? Getting through to a human, everything feels taken over by AI. Again, want to validate you. You are absolutely not alone in this. I'm going to just underscore, I have seen it. I have had the bird's eye view. I also am having trouble getting to the next slide. Okay, one second. Okay, let's go back. All right. Okay, so the challenges are real. And it's not you, by the way. A lot of this has to do with flooding the field. There are just so many candidates now. AI has helped people in many ways. AI has hurt people in many ways. Also, the economy is not great. And it's just been a roller coaster where there was over hiring during, a few years ago. And now there's been a correction of that. And so if you're feeling the whiplash, so are HR managers, okay? Now, but none of these are excuses. This is the reality we're in. It is difficult, but I always feel like challenges can is an invitation, an opportunity to really up level how we are showing up in our lives. So not just our careers. I think the job search itself can teach you so much about who you are and who you want to be. So while it is difficult, is growth ever easy? No. But let's talk about a different approach, because if you keep just, as they say, spraying and praying, meaning you just put a bunch of applications out into the world and hope something works, like a numbers game, you might really feel demoralized here. So I think you need a fresh strategy. And the strategy is rooted in this question. If I asked you to invest, let's say $300,000 in me, I picked that number because that was the most I ever was paid for a deal. If I asked you to invest $300,000 in me, what would I need to show you? Okay, what would I need to show you to make you feel confident that you are going to get as they say, a return on your investment? This is the question that hirers are asking themselves about you. Because when they hire you, it's not a favor, it's not charity. They're not just hoping, well, it'll be a fine deal. No, they're hoping it'll be a great deal, that you will in turn make the company more money than what they invested in your paycheck. Because that's what it is. As somebody who's hired people, I see you as an investment. So you need to see yourself as an investment. And that's what brings me to this LLC of me, where you are no longer an employee asking for someone to take a chance on you. No, instead, you are a company pitching yourself for an investment opportunity or a customer. And I'll tell you why this mindset, it really is game changing. It's not just like a, oh, sounds nice. No, it really informs your strategy here. First of all, it depersonalizes the situation. This is no longer about, people hoping for work, but really about pitching opportunities. Okay. And also, it hopefully will insert a little more objectivity in how you're doing your job search if you can see yourself not like an individual, but like a company. And when you have more objectivity, that usually means more perspective, and more perspective will equal clarity. That's the goal. So I do think it's a mindset, again, that's not just a nice to have, but it will open up some things for you. So here's what we're going to cover today. My goal is to leave questions at the end. If for some reason I overtalk, which is always a possibility, considering this presentation is technically a 2-hour presentation that I've condensed into 1 hour. If I do not get a chance to answer as many questions as I'd like, you can LinkedIn me, DM me, tell me you were part of this program. I'll absolutely get back to you, and I'll give you all my contact information. But what we are covering here is knowing your customer. So remember, customer is the company. Where are we going to find them? How do we do creative research? And how do we better understand what their pain points are? So I'm going to give you a prompt for AI that you can use when analyzing job descriptions to really get kind of in between the lines of what is actually currently hurting their business if they don't hire somebody like you. Now we have to know ourselves. So what makes us special? Okay. And I will also address anyone who's pivoting, because I heard that. All right, then we have to know how to articulate it. So we know how, what makes us special and how it might serve their business needs, their pain points. But there's that gap between what we know and what they know. We have to articulate it. So I'll do a brief coverage on resume, cover letter, and LinkedIn, just kind of my top tips. Knowing how to make an impression. So this is about interviewing. Mindsets for you to come in with, just to be a little less nervous, or at least channel your nerves into presence, okay, into energy. How do we be clear? How do we be memorable? I'll give you phrases to say to help them understand what to listen to when you're speaking. And then a super brief slide. It's actually my favorite slide, but it'll be the briefest part of today, is how do you sustain your energy throughout all of this? How do we protect your well-being? Because as an entrepreneur, I have had major ups and downs in my businesses. And again, remember, this is the analogy of entrepreneurism to job seeking. If you do not protect your well-being during what is really a marathon, okay, it's not a sprint, then you'll run out of steam and you're no use to anyone, right? So you actually really have to continually put yourself first in many ways. So we'll talk about that briefly. And as I go through today's presentation, just something to always ask yourself as you are applying for jobs, doing outreach, connecting with people for informational interviews. It's about, are you speaking their language? So what's in it for them? As you talk about yourself, it has to relate to what they care about, what their priorities are, what their problems are. Also, think about, have I made this so incredibly easy for them to instantly see my value? It takes 7 seconds for somebody to decide whether or not your resume is what they're looking for. So look yourself. Is there ease with which this has been presented? And then how can I just make this easier for myself in all ways? All right. By the way, feel free to jump in the comments as I'm speaking, in the chat as I'm speaking, and don't wait to the end to ask your questions because chances are there is somebody else in this Zoom room who can speak to what you're looking for. So let's leverage each other. And also, when it's time for questions, I'll take a look through the chat and see what's been coming up. Okay. But let's start with knowing your customer. All right. Well, first, let's actually talk about you, what you even care about. And I have a something for free. I'm going to give you all a way to figure out your own career clarity. But do start with what interests you. What are you curious about? What products, problems, people are just interesting to you? So do notice as you're reading through the newspaper in the morning, what are you drawn to? Also, what are products that you continually use? You'll have a great connection to that story, a personal story, if you want to even take an inventory of things that you use in your life that have brought you great value. My goal for you is to build a target list of 50 companies though. So we are not going to just happen to see what, job listings are out there because job listings, if they're posted online, they're already in the process of being filled. We want to get you in the door before the door is even open. So how do we do that? Not starting with open jobs, but just starting with companies. Who's out there doing interesting things? So that's where we begin. And how do we find these companies? Honestly, I would begin with going to conferences. And by going to conferences, I don't mean showing up in person because guess what? That's a lot of time and money. Okay. I mean, use AI for this, by the way. Make me a list of, 20 conferences in this industry that I'm interested in. Give a bunch of detail to AI I like to use Claude for this type of stuff. And what you're looking for here are who are the speakers, what companies are those speakers from, and also who are the sponsors of those speakers. You know why I'm suggesting this? These people usually have money. Okay, we want to go where the money is. That means they might be hiring. Okay. Also, podcast guests in your industry. Best of list, top 50 list, VC portfolio companies. They're also called portcos. So start with like Andreessen Horowitz or just Google or put into, Claude or ChatGPT. Who are the top VCs? Where can I find their portfolios? Angel List is a good source too. Why? Money, right? These are funded companies. And usually if they're recently funded, that means they're hiring. They have to scale fast. They have to prove themselves. We want to go where the money is, like I said. LinkedIn groups, look at who's actively commenting, where do they work? These are all people who are effectively raising their hand and saying, I'm putting myself out there. They want to connect with you. Also, connector friends, by the way, really efficient networking tip here is instead of just trying to build relationships with anybody in your life, really think about who's the people I know who just happen to know everybody. They can make introductions for you. So invest in those relationships. All right. So again, use AI to help guide you. Give it some good prompts of what are the problems you like solving, industries that interest you. I heard somebody say oil and gas, right? Just start there. Set a goal of finding 20 companies that when you look at their website, you're seeing signals of growth and aligned mission with you. And you can also take a look, by the way, company culture. Anyone can say they have a good culture. You've really got to see proof. See who works there. How long have they worked there? They've worked there for a long time. It probably is a good culture. See how long can you tell from LinkedIn? Does it take them to be promoted? Right? Again, anyone can say anything on a website, but follow who works there and what their career paths tend to be. It will, the proof is in that. Okay. All right. Let's talk about job descriptions though, because I know I said on one hand, my goal is for you not to go through open jobs and instead connect with people at companies, develop relationships with them, and then pitch yourself and say, hey, when you have an opening, keep me in mind. But I still want you to look at open jobs. It's not an either or, it's an and. And you can also create your own ideal job description, by the way. This is something for those who might want to hire me later to be their coach, this is what we'll do together is we'll create an ideal job description based off of cobbling together things you see out there. You're going to build all of your materials, your LinkedIn, your resume, how you speak about yourself. It all needs to be oriented towards an open job description. Why? It's a cheat sheet for business problems. The company is literally telling you, not in their actual words. So I'll give you an AI prompt in just a second for how to get under the hood. But job descriptions, if you analyze them correctly, are effectively telling you everything you need to know about what business problems they are currently suffering from that you, as the employee slash company, could help solve for them. Okay. So this is what we would do. We copy and paste your entire job description that either you create or that we find out there. And we're going to put it into, and I use Claude for this, and take a screenshot here. Analyze this job description. And I don't usually have them create a table. I just say, just create a document with each stated responsibility, with the underlying pain point, and then the business impact. So if this problem isn't solved, what would it cost the company financially, operationally, or strategically? Think like a business owner who is desperate to fill this role. What's keeping them up at night? And then it will come back to you with, oh, and by the way, I forgot a last part of this prompt that I always do, which I didn't include in today's slides. I apologize. I always say, make a recommendation, and I'll repeat this for everyone, make a recommendation for the most compelling case studies that I can put together as part of my application materials. Okay, let me just shut my door. So I'm going to repeat that again. You also want, based off of what you've put into AI here in this slide, suggest compelling case studies I can put together as the foundation of my materials that will speak to this analysis, right? And what you're going to get here is effectively a guide for how you can reflect on your career. Okay, I've done a lot. I've done a lot of different things, right? Of those things I've done, which might be the strongest case that I could make that speaks to the business pain points as it relates to this analysis. You're going to do this for every job that you apply to. So before you just come up with an application, I want you to really analyze. I call it the JDD, the job description dissection. Okay. I want you to analyze what are they truly looking for, and then say, in my career, what have I done that speaks to these bullet points as it's laid out? Okay. Because otherwise, it's too much and it's not going to be targeted enough. You're also not going to stand out. This is the crux of everything I'm telling you today. This is the best first step you can take, okay? And I'm happy to answer any questions. So here's a quick example of if you did ask it to make you a table. Again, I never do. I like bullet points instead. But when a company says manage cross-functional projects, well, I always think, what's the shit show actually happening behind the scenes? Well, it usually means teams are in silos, they're struggling to coordinate. Okay, well, what's the business impact of that? Missing deadlines, resource conflicts, strategy misalignment, right? So when you think about the case studies, remember, I use the word case studies to think of initiatives you've worked on, projects you've done. It could be something you were self-motivated to do, something given to you, just a little concrete example of work you've done. Well, you're going to talk about ways in which you got deadlines done on time. You mediated resource conflicts. You were able to get a strategy back on track, right? So I know I can't spend too much more time on this, but again, I really just want to underscore this is the place to begin. And by the way, just do more research than anyone else on this stuff and use AI to your advantage here. Anything you can find that you can weave into your materials. So if you heard the CEO mention something in a white paper, on a podcast, or something like that, you could mention it in a cover letter or in your outreach, demonstrating that you're not just doing a typical BCC type email, right? That you've put in effort to doing research. This is how businesses or, consultants gain business, is that they're really tailoring what they're saying to what the person needs to hear. Use what they've put out on the internet, leverage what they've said about themselves. But we need to know about ourselves first here. Okay. What makes you special? Why should I hire you? And I have to say, for women in particular, not just women, but I specialize in women. I married one. So we really have a hard time often saying why we're great. It's like I've heard from women over and over again, well, I just was doing my job. Like, why does that? I don't know. That's what they needed me to do. Like, okay, let me break down what I see as your edge. Okay. Your edge, it's a combination of things. So instead of searching for what is the one thing that makes me special, you're going to be pulling your hair out. It's actually about the alchemy or the combination of a number of factors that makes you special. By the way, these things are red flags to me. detail-oriented team player, passionate, hard worker with strong communication skills. Why? Because anyone can say it. It's not unique enough. Plus, there's no proof here. So I will show you different ways to look at it and articulate it. So your combination, to me, what makes you special? It's how you solve problems, the skills required to solve those problems, the experiences that you've had in solving those problems, and your personal perspective on solving those problems, which often means life experience, not just work experience. Remember, you're being paid, you're being hired to solve problems. This always comes down to problem solving. So just think about this: the skills required, how you did it, which is usually your approach or your methodology, experiences you've had, which has informed your expertise, but also some personal perspective. And this might be more of those, quote, softer skills. So problem solving patterns. So I'd love for you all to reflect on your career, on your life, things inside of work, outside of work, and just make a big spreadsheet of a bunch of stuff that you did that you loved doing, or you found interesting, or gave you energy in some way. And just detail out responses to some of these questions, or to all these questions if you have time. And do also ask yourself, what would have happened if this problem remained unsolved? We oftentimes don't think about what's called the opportunity cost of all of this stuff. And that, again, is what they're paying you for, right? If they don't hire this person, they're going to lose money. So do take it seriously. Of the work that you've done, if you were not there to do that work, how much of a problem would that have been for your company? This is an aha moment that unlocks a lot, especially for people in positions where companies don't always give them the respect that they deserve, like executive assistants, okay? Or anybody in a supporting role. You think, oh, it wasn't, I'm just doing my job. Your job is actually hugely instrumental to helping that company solve problems and make money. And one way to see that is by asking myself, if I was not there, okay, if they had not had that position filled, what would have been the problems that would have caused? I also want you to reflect on your personal perspective. Now, how do you figure out your personal perspective, your life experience that counts? I honestly think it comes through obstacles, which is why I started today's presentation with mentioning some of my own obstacles. I didn't go into detail, but they include things like my son's medical crisis. He's fine now, but he's had multiple open heart surgeries. I have grown so much, not just as a human being, but as a coach, or as things that I do professionally, because of personal circumstances. So do reflect also, what have I gone through in my life? What did it teach me? Okay. That will help you stand out. I mean, we have to figure out how to strategically place it in your story, right? Whether it's something you lead with or end with, or use as an extra level. But very quick example here. I have a client who was pivoting. She's a designer. She wanted to work in finance because she was seeing there were opportunities there. And it was between her and another candidate, and he had a traditional background. And she said, Claire, I don't think they're going to hire me because if you compare our work experience, he's a better fit. And I said, you're right. That's why you can't try to compete with him on experience. You need to compete with him on something he doesn't have, which for her, it was her personal story of getting into debt and then teaching herself personal finance. And it's not like this company, by the way, was a, quote, personal finance company. It was a very traditional corporate finance firm. But you have to remember, you're dealing human to human, right? You're being hired, even though I want you to think of yourself like a company. Remember, it's still a human being with all of their problems in their life who you're connecting with. You never know whose story might ring, pull the heartstrings of another story. So I had made sure in all of her interviewing, she really talked about how transformative it was to learn about finance in her career. And guess what? She was hired, right? So don't discount the personal story that you can bring. But of course, you have to connect it to, how does this make you better at your job? How will this help solve problems for the company? So never forget, you got to make that connection. Otherwise, we're just having drinks and, commiserating here. You've got to be strategic in how you tell this story. So you bring it all together. And it's hard to gain this perspective. So I'm really glad you're here in a group setting, or you might be considering hiring a coach, because we are all too close to ourselves. Okay. So, here are some, quote, edge examples, how you bring together all these sort of disparate elements in your career and in your life. And these are from real clients I've had. for example, a nurse, I was working with a nurse who also wanted to do a career pivot. And I asked, my first question to her was, what products have you used as a nurse that you feel like could be improved? And and she was like, oh, there's this technology that we were given that I see great potential in, but here were some issues, whatever. And I said, you could actually, she wanted to pivot into tech. I said, I think you should go pitch yourself to work at that company because you have the perspective of the customer, being the nurse who used the equipment. You have ideas for how to make it better. And she could tell a whole story about that. And she had some personal experience as a caregiver, so again, not one thing that makes you special. It has to be told in a succinct way, but it's the elements that we bring together. And I think for pivoters, this is even more important because you can't necessarily rely on traditional experience like that example I recently gave you. So I do think it's about mentioning how you have done learning curves well. How have you been self motivated, quick learners? You've done your research on what's required to solve the challenges in this next role. This is a whole other talk for career pivoters, but I don't want you to be discouraged. I actually want you to say, wow, my personal perspective, my methodology, my approach, how I think, okay, is as important as my skills. That may be on, you may need to grow some of those skills as well, but it's just about where do you emphasize in your entire story? Where are we focusing? And distract them by having them focus on some other aspects of your edge. Okay. None of this matters though if you don't have proof. So it can't just be, I work hard, like I mentioned. Okay, we worked hard. Then what happened as a result of the working hard? And you really need to quantify this as best as you can. I like this sentence: proof beats promises, which I'm sure for some people, I'm going to get to you in a minute in a slide. That's like, if you're having a hard time quantifying your work, we just need to be more creative in how we do it. But think of your proof as impact. How did what you do or what you did impact at least another person, another team, and then how did they impact the business bottom line? So you could really break it down by what you did, how you did it, the quantified result, why it mattered for the business. If you can't tell this story, then you probably shouldn't have been hired, okay? Because that means you were superfluous. And that's not true. Everybody here has worked for a company where you made them money. So you got to follow the money trail here and just at least start with, okay, I did a thing. Who was a singular person I impacted by doing that thing? And then also make sure you understand how are all the ways that company you used to work for or you're currently working for, how are they making money? Where are all of their revenue streams coming from? When that CEO or whoever has to defend their years numbers to, let's say, a board, where do you fit into that? And I really encourage everybody, for whatever next job they have, or if you're currently employed, start documenting this stuff now with real examples. Because if you don't have real examples with real number, you're just not going to stand out. So here's a quick example of that, right? Quote, improved communication. Well, what does that mean? Like, how do you improve communication? How do you even define communication? And like, how does that translate into what the CEO might care about? So we no longer need to, again, think of ourselves as these employees, but we have to channel CEO energy here, because again, that's how they're deciding who's going to stay on or not. Here are some ways to quantify your work. Of course, the easy one, sales, right? Money brought in. But also, I think money saved, hugely important. And money saved can also be time saved. Also, loyalty. If you've been a mentor to somebody, you improved, you sped up someone else's learning curve. That's time saved. That's making them more productive. That's also money. So you can always use AI for this. Hey, this is my job function was. I'm struggling to find ways to quantify it. How should I be thinking about it? And based off of that, put in more inputs, more details. I once listened to a panel on AI and she said shit inputs equals shit outputs. Okay. So the quality of the answer that AI will give you is truly based on the quality of the information you're putting into AI. So more information is better. Okay. So just word vomit all the things you did and tell it all of your struggles of how you can't quantify it and really have AI help guide you here. So this is where AI is wonderful in helping job seekers. Again, it's a double-edged sword. My role didn't make money. Truly, it did. Otherwise, your role would be eliminated. So here are some ways you can rethink that. So this is the best one. How did your work enable others to generate revenue? But we can't talk about everything that we've done, because the more you talk, the more you write, the less people listen to you, which is probably happening right about now because it's getting a bit long. So I want you to think about and use AI for this based on that job description dissection, the analysis that you did. What are the strongest 3 to 5 examples that I can really bring? And these are examples that will be front and center in all of your materials, but you'll also hold a couple of them in your back pocket for when you get to the interview stage. But truly think about which one had the highest impact, best demonstrates your skills. Again, and always reference that analysis you did. Do these speak to the pain points that the key responsibilities are targeting? You'll feel really like this. To me, is what you should review before you go in for an interview. It's not like, how am I going to answer a question or memorizing answers, because then you'll come across as not human, and we don't want that. I would say the best thing to review is what are the 3 to 5 strongest examples of work that I've done that really demonstrate my edge as it relates to the pain points of the business. And so the way I look at the ecosystem of all of your materials, so now we're in the phase of how do you articulate yourself. We've got a master doc. If you work with me as a client, we have a big folder with your case studies, your edge descriptions, your quantified achievement, all of that. And we're going to pull from that master folder into LinkedIn, which to me, it's your home on the internet. And it is effectively, it's a longer version of your resume, okay? But a shorter version of your master document. So, and it's all optimized for discoverability. LinkedIn, your big resume. Your resume is a shorter, tailored version for the specific job that you're applying for. So are you copying and pasting quite a bit? Yes, you are. Yes, you are. I want somebody who looks at your resume to go, ooh, I'd like to look at their LinkedIn, right? And then see more detail. The cover letter is the description of your best case studies, and then the interview prep or stories from that master document. So I just wanted to mention kind of how all the materials work together in an ecosystem. Again, I've taught full presentations specifically on resumes and on cover letters, so I'm condensing all this into just 1 or 2 slides here. But basically, my recommendation is to have an executive summary at the top with career highlights. So if they're spending about 7 seconds looking at your resume, don't make them do work. The goal is to have them to continue to read. But what's going to hook them at the beginning? It's being able to explain how what you've done with proof points, okay, career highlights, quantified, based on that analysis that you did from that job description. So that's the best thing you can do. And I want to keep speeding through. So, quick example here, arts administrator seeking new role. We need to use words that are reflected in the job description itself. That's a great idea. And I'm going to just keep speeding through. I'm happy to answer questions on resume, but I know there's other experts on it and something you might cover in this group anyway, so I don't want to be redundant with that. Cover letter, I'm going to show you an example of a cover letter. So this is just a little framework. It's called Accent, but let me show you in my example what I mean here. Everything, by the way, this cover letter was written based off of the dissection of that job description. So it's not taking the job description and saying, write me a cover letter. No, it's taking the analysis of the job description and saying, help me write a cover letter that speaks to these things with all of this information about my edge that we put into it. I'm a big fan of bullet points, bold. I know, this first sentence or first 2 sentences, it's speaking to things that I uncovered in the job description dissection that I did. I think it's also okay to open your cover letter and also your about section on LinkedIn. It might not be bad to already mention something unique about yourself, because we want to hook their attention. People are busy and bored doing this work. They're annoyed. They wish that they hired somebody yesterday. So what's going to stand out? It could be something like, and this is what one client did, and I'm not saying it's right for everybody, but I want to just offer it as an alternative option, that's something to consider. She said, I define project management, or I see myself and my project management role like a duck, paddling furiously beneath the water, but gliding effortlessly above, or what you see as effortless. And she then begins, this was her about section of her LinkedIn, but she also put it in a cover letter. She starts it with her thesis on what does it take to be an excellent project manager. Then she gives concrete examples of that. Um, so that could be an option for you as well. How do you see your role and its critical function? And then why you? So play with this, but always go back to they're bored and annoyed. How do I cut through that? And I'll give you all the slides. So I know we're going through this quickly because I want to get to questions. Okay, with LinkedIn, use your banner to your advantage. You know, there's lots of free resources out there. You can use like Canva, where you can design a banner that has more information. Again, it's like your resume or cover letter, where if you don't have something at the top to hook them, they're not going to keep reading. So don't bury the good stuff too far below. So you could have, I don't have an example for you here today, unfortunately, but you know, check out my LinkedIn, for example. You see up there, I help you expand your worth inside and out. Because I want to take advantage of that above the fold space. I want to give you as much information, compelling information about me and how I can help solve your problems. You've got your headline, but also use that banner as a place to really describe what do you do, but through the lens of the problems you solve. For your headlines, huge fan of doing saying actually quite a bit, but having dividers. And you might even want to think about if you've done anything that's impressive metric. So a gentleman who was on earlier mentioned he saved a client $100,000 in the work that he did. Hey, you know, that might be something he decides in his headline. He puts titles that he's looking for because that helps discoverability. So maybe two different titles that would suit him. And then maybe he has a sentence about, I saved a client $100,000 through XYZ. Okay. Or if you were a fundraiser or sales or there was an impressive metric, it's not right for everybody. There's not a one size fits all for LinkedIn guidance, which might be some people's frustration here is because you're looking for a silver bullet. Really depends on who you are and what you're looking for. But the point is you're asking yourself, is this going to help somebody immediately understand the value I bring to the business bottom line? Okay. So here are some examples. I couldn't remember if I put them in here, and I did. Okay. Let's talk about interviewing. We're getting right through this. I'm good for me for speeding through just so we can circle back and you'll have the slides and the recording. So, with the interview mindset, here's the thing. If you get an interview, I want you to feel so unbelievably proud of yourself because you have already won. You might not have won the job yet. Chances are you won't, by the way. There are so many things out of your control. So it's not to go into the interview thinking, oh, I'm not going to get it. No, it's to go in saying, I already won if I look at it through the lens of networking. I have the chance to expand my network. You never know where people go after this. And your goal in this is to connect human to human. So, again, I know we're pitching ourselves as a business that solves business solutions, but the sort of presence, the energy that we're bringing to this interaction is how do I break through the noise or how do I turn an interview into a real conversation where we're just being, I call it strategically transparent. So it's not just coming through and being totally honest about where you're at in your life. You need it to be incredibly professional, but I want you to be also you because that'll now make you feel good. If this is a company that's the right fit for you, they should know who you are too. So, my best suggestion in all of this is can you be present? Okay, really do exercises. This is going to probably take you weeks in advance, and it's just good life suggestion here. How do you cultivate more in the moment, in the presence, where you are truly here, you're actively listening, and you're responding, and you're able to pick up on energy? I know that's hard to do virtually, and it's also hard to do in person too, because we have a lot of nerves, but it's a skill set, it's a muscle. You can develop it, and you will be memorable by just simply being more of a presence versus coming through and being rushed, trying to, you memorize a script, you want to be as professional as possible, say whatever you think they need you to say. That's what most people are doing. So I'm telling you, you will cut through more of that noise by simply being a full embodied present person. Okay. What are they looking for though? They're basically evaluating you through the three-prong lens. Do you get me? So, did they do their research? Can you speak my language? Do you understand my challenges? Can I trust you? So, do you have a track record of delivering results? Like, even in a different sector, I need to see proof. And then, what's the ROI, meaning return on investment? So, what is this person's potential here? Like, you've shown what you've done in the past, but can you sell me on the dream? What are we going to do together for the future? Like, almost get me excited about my own company again. Because, again, people who are interviewing are really exhausted. So if you're coming in with really positive energy, that will stand out. But people are notoriously bad at listening, and you got to tell them what to listen for. So I do a lot of interview coaching, and we talk about ways to frame what you're saying. Like, you literally say, "Let me tell you what makes me uniquely effective." Okay. Or the key insight here was, okay, don't just assume that they can understand this or they're inferring anything. Assumptions are never good. Like, what made this successful was my ability to, okay, using that kind of language will wake them up and tell them what to listen for. And then a way to shift this from interview mode, which is them asking you questions, you answering and repeating, we want to make it more conversational, which how do you respond to something and then turn it into a sort of a tennis match, a volley back to them? You could literally say, well, I'm curious how you currently handle X, Y, and Z. So if you're telling a story from your past, okay, I did this. Here's what made it successful. I'm really proud of it, blah, 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 blah. I'm curious if that's also, if you guys have tried that in your blah, blah, blah. Okay. Get them to talk about themselves. People love talking about themselves. It'll also buy you more time. You can, as you're listening, actively listening, pick up on the things they're saying and then build on it. Really interesting. You tried that method, that approach. I found when we did something similar, blah, 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 like almost treat the interview as if you've already been hired and it is the kickoff strategy session for how you can best tackle their needs. That might really help you with your nerves too. It's like, I've already been hired. What we're trying to do here is to figure out, get under the hood a little bit more of their problems, and also for them to better understand how I might solve them. And so, if make it a goal, even as you walk away from this interview, give away value to them. It would be amazing if they walked away and said, wow, I just realized better ways that we could be tackling our problems. They'll hire you. Well, I can't guarantee that, but like, provide more value to them than just understanding who you are. Like, have them become better at their job because of your presence. That is a wonderful goal. Plus, when you're out of work, particularly, it's you can be itching to just flex your work muscles again. So use the interview experience as almost an intellectual exercise to roll up your sleeves and kind of get back into the workforce a little bit. And then you'll walk away feeling like, okay, even if I don't get the job, like, I felt interested by that conversation, right? That energized me. That would be wonderful. Let's talk about that dreaded initial question, though, that many of us get in the interview, which is, so tell me about yourself. You're like, oh, existential crisis. What does this mean? You need structure. You need a framework. I'm going to give you an example in just a second. The opening, your edge, so what sets you apart, a proof point, and then what motivates you and how it connects to the role. By the way, same advice that I gave a few slides ago of sometimes you might want to start with more of the personal perspective. Again, this is something where I'd want to work with you as a coach on this. But you'll notice, and I'm not going to read this whole example out loud because you can see it. I hate when people just read slides. What you can see here, though, is that signaling language. What sets me apart? Okay. And then, hey, quick example. Quantified. What drives me is bringing order to chaos. So many times you might be talking about what drives you without even saying the words, what drives me. I want you to literally say, what drives me is bringing order to chaos. There's nothing more satisfying than walking into a mess and building systems that make people's lives easier. That's exactly why this role caught my eye. Okay. I said I wouldn't read off the slide. Oops. There you go. So just want to, again, remind everybody, if you get the interview, feel really good because we all want to expand our network. And hopefully your next job comes through relationships, which I heard somebody say earlier, starting today, that was how they got their last job. So exactly. How do we sustain our energy through all of this? I think it's about knowing exactly what you're going to be working on today and when. I'm a huge fan of putting things in the calendar too. So spend a lot of time with an actual whiteboard or taking notes. What are all the things that you need to get done? And overwhelm yourself. Like, be minute about it. The smaller the action step, the better. So if you give me 5 steps, I'm going to say, no, you're going to be stuck if you try to tackle this because it's not actually 5 steps, it's probably 25 steps. Things like not just writing your LinkedIn, but which piece of your LinkedIn, because you're not going to have time to work on the whole thing in one sitting. I don't want you to. Or not even just starting your LinkedIn. How about doing research on other people's LinkedIn headlines? Well, what does it take to do research? Prompts, putting it into AI, micro scheduling, and put the tasks in your calendar. And then schedule in breaks, please. That means scheduling in joy. How in a given week are you filling your cup? And don't see that as a distraction from job searching. It is fueling your job search. Also, continuing to feel your impact. If you are not currently working or working in a job that feels good to you, make sure, whether it's volunteering, side hustle, writing project, anything you can do where you are practicing work that you actually want to do, that will help you be a better job seeker. Because otherwise, that disconnect between where you currently are and where you want to be will only keep growing. And that's when things like self doubt and imposter syndrome creep in. So just make sure you're doing the work. If not in the ideal version, at least you're flexing your muscles. And also look for progress in different ways. If we only say progress comes by submitting X amount of applications or getting the job, or we're going to be waiting to feel good for a long time. So just like I recommended breaking down all of your to-dos into micro tasks, I also really encourage you to think about progress in as creative ways as possible, but also make sure it's progress that you can control, that you are not waiting on anyone else. Okay? Because again, if I'm only going to feel good when I get the job, well, all that's out of my control, pretty much. So how about I feel progress when I dialogued with my self-doubt differently today? That's progress that I can control. Big recommendation. So hopefully, good. We have time for questions. I'm so thrilled. I'm going to take a look at the chats in a moment, but I'm also going to put a bunch of free resources into that chat right now. So just hang tight. I'm hoping today gave you either underscored things you already know, but hopefully also showed you new ways to approach it and give you tangible next steps. Speaking of next steps, these are my next best ones for you. Starting with that target list, about 50 companies. By the way, 50 feels daunting. A quote, easy way to make that list is start with just a few, let's say 5, and then say into Google or into whatever AI platform you use, find me the competitor companies to these. Keep going in your research on what companies compete with each other, because if they're competing with each other for market share, aka customers, right, they're also competing with each other for talent. This is the same advice I give for anyone who is negotiating their salary. The amount of money you can get in a given time has everything to do with how much that company's competitor is paying their talent. And that's why you'll see there'll be years where certain group of people like software engineers are getting paid a ton of money. Now software engineers are getting paid less money because of AI, or it's just in flux. Everything's in flux. And by the way, if it feels like things keep changing, it's because actually change is happening more rapidly than ever before. But it's all about competitor companies. So that is a great way you can do research on, oh, there's 5 companies I'm interested in. Who are their competitors? Finding those job descriptions, dissecting them, identifying your edge. What role did you play in this problem solving experience that you did? Quantifying and then updating your materials as best you can with all that information you were able to gather. And then here are my free resources. These are supposed to be hyperlinked. I will make sure when I send you all the slides that they are hyperlinked. But I'm going to give you everything in the chat because I shockingly prepared all of this. So I have links for all of these things and they're free. So career clarity guide, an interview pitch kit, a well-being workbook. And then if you want to receive my newsletter, then I'll put that in the chat shortly. And then I have personalized support options for anyone who is interested. And I appreciate the chance to be able to talk about how I can help because sometimes, free is a great listen, you could do all this work on your own. I'll just get you there faster. So what you're paying for is perspective and speed. Again, you will get this all by email and also do private coaching. Basically, I just want to underscore the LLC of B here really quickly. I can do all of this for you. I have trained an AI model. So I give you about 20 questions, a little less than, that will take you maybe 2 hours to respond to. Based on how you respond to the questions and the AI model I trained, I can create all of your materials and strategy. It's about a 60-page document. And then we do a 60-minute walkthrough of what I put together, but also how do you replicate it for all future jobs. So it's not like I'm helping you apply for one job and you're done. It's a template that you can use as you move forward. It's really for somebody who's like, I'm just tired and I don't want to do this myself. I am thrilled to do it for you. And I really learned that by the coaching I've done. I would say, let me teach you. And then they had to actually do the work. And that's very tiring when you have a whole life. So I'm happy to do the work for you. Let me go ahead and put my those free resources though into the chat and check what has been going on in the chat. It looks like lots of conversation happening. I don't know if Kathy or Shannon wants to jump in at this point as well. We've got, I believe, about 10 minutes left, which was exactly the timing I was looking for. So hopefully I didn't speak too fast, but my goal was to give you as much good information that you can review on your own after. So Kathy, did you want to jump in real quick? I saw
Well,
you
I wanted
unmute.
to point out Alan Bernstein had been talking about his particular situation, and Shannon had said, just why don't you wait and ask her about it. So, Alan, you want to unmute and ask your question?
Sure. So I guess I was just responding to Andrew's comment, but just to explain, I think he said something about government and nonprofit jobs being hard to quantify, and that's how I feel about a lot of my recent experience as well. This is something I've asked about in previous meetings where we've like gone into more detail on like the STAR method, for example, um, which maybe wasn't exactly the focus here. But so just for an example of my previous work, I worked at a software startup that struggled to acquire users and funding for its entire existence until eventually I left and then it was acquired. And so, I was there for 5 years and then I found another job. I was there for 2 years. So for the better part of a decade, I haven't done any kind of job searching. I wasn't thinking at all about this, like, how do I do work and record notes about my work and quantify my work for the sake of my resume? So, uh, the work that I did just is really not conducive to explaining in that kind of STAR method framework on a resume. Like, I didn't make the company any money. The company never made money at all. The only person who brought money in was the CEO uh, by getting bridge funding and venture capital funding from his friends. Like, I don't know how common that kind of situation is. I think the software startup world was pretty big like a decade ago, and it's probably somewhat more dried up now. But there was a lot of experience that I gained in certain technologies in that job, but I really don't feel like it gave me much in the sense of marketing myself as
Mm-hmm.
somebody with money-making skills.
Mm-hmm. Couple of ways we could go here. First, I would really urge you to that job description dissection because it'll also give you the recommendations for case studies. So you can say, you can now have a basically, it's giving you prompts to reflect on. So in the experiences that I've had, while they didn't lead to quote success in a quantified way, how did the skills I gained, the experience I had, my personal perspective, how can that speak to the pain points of this next company that I'm going to join? So when you think of it in a vacuum, like you're describing right now, it will be really hard to answer that question. I want you to use that job description dissection to then ask yourself what you're asking me right now. I think you'll have things will come to mind when you see it. Here's the thing though, you could go two paths as well. There is value in the struggle. So the struggle to acquire customers, et cetera, when you think back to what it took to try to make it work, because I think you said 5 years you were there, I'm sure you were trying many different things. Maybe you're kind of an expert in the pivot. You know what? So find value in the struggle, but again, use that job description dissection to know what points of that experience are most relevant to think about. Also, the company did get acquired. So technically, would you say that's a success story? Unfortunately, you know the truth, right? Which is maybe it was acquired for peanuts and whatever. But on paper, you are able to lead with, I worked for a company that was acquired. That signals success. So you might, it's so hard when you know the truth, when you've been in the weeds of the hardship. But I do want to first have you find what was the skills and value in the struggle that you could use to talk about yourself. And then there probably were other metrics of success. I mean, ideally it would be how much money, how many customers, et cetera. But were there no other markers of progress along the way? I mean, was the whole thing
No,
get faster for 5 years,
I think there were. I mean, I have a long list of bullet points on my resume. It's just like I don't have an easy time framing those in that, quantifiable way, which I've been told many times by different, job
Mm-hmm.
search advisors that that's the best thing to do to, make yourself marketable.
Mm-hmm. I want to just respect if there's any other questions with the 5 minutes left, but
Yeah.
I would say if there's literally nothing you can say, then you can't make things up. So then you just have to shift focus away from that. And it's really about, again, in that experience, the struggle of the trying to acquire customers in 5 years, how many times y'all had to pivot or whatever came out of that. That is your edge. That is what you are excellent at. And that is what you want to make sure is highlighted in all of your materials. So if you truly can't say the thing that everybody needs you to say, then how do you lean into what you really did do that was great?
Yeah.
Claire has asked, um, how would you recommend listing similar roles on LinkedIn, like operations analyst and Slate, which is a university, and academic software, Slate CRM analyst, without confusing recruiters and hiring managers?
So are you mind asking the question? So the problem is that there are different roles or that you had disparate titles that might confuse how you're
Yeah,
coming
that's what
across.
it sounds like.
I think you have an opening sentence. So here's the thing. If you have two options here. You could either change the title you had and hope they don't reach out to that company and ask. You could make that title a more of a functional description. So if that one sentence that describes the title, what did you actually do in that job, use words that are related to what you want to do next. You could also keep the title and underneath the title have a one sentence description of what did you do in that job. And again, making sure it's related in some capacity to the next thing you want to do. It's probably my
Hey,
best
Claire.
advice. Yeah.
Sorry, this is Paige. That was my question. So long time listener, first time caller. So my question is more the fact that on the headline, I want to make sure I grab as many recruiter and hiring managers' attention, but I don't want to confuse them because right now I have Slate analysts,
Mm-hmm.
which may make sense to like a small group of people, and then other people won't realize that I have operations experience and whatnot. So I just want to make sure that my LinkedIn is getting as much interest as possible.
Yeah. I mean, again, I would lead with a sentence like use the full, first of all the characters, say what it is that you want to do moving forward.
Okay.
Like that's how you solve. I think for everybody here who's like, oh no, what I've done in the past is not necessarily what I want to do in the future. You literally use your headline as that. This is the introduction of myself, of how I want you to see me moving forward. All the experience will show your background, but that first headline is more about the future than anything else. Whereas everybody always thinks it has to be my current or old title. No, it's just how do you like, hello, my name is Claire. I help women expand their worth inside and out or whatever. And then you get into the details later. So start with the function of the job that you want to do moving forward. My best advice. And hopefully that was the answer to your question.
And I'm also in California, by the way.
Yay.
Good to see you.
Good to see you. I know now we've officially woken up. It's 9:30 in the morning here. We started a little bit early for us. And by the way, for all the like, I work for a nonprofit, government, it's not about business bottom line. Well, there's the board of advisors. Trust me, I've worked for nonprofits. I was in the fundraising capacity. So yes, that was about the money. You answer to a lot of people. You answer to you have a whole board, or you have to answer to the public or to taxpayers. You have to defend the choices you make as the CEO or as the, not CEO, I guess it would be the president. You have to defend, why did we choose to invest our resources in this area? Why does that best serve our constituency? In many ways, government positions and nonprofits have to be held to even higher standards. Okay, they're really accountable to their work. So even if it is not for profit, they're not just doing random things and not, justifying it. So you're saying, okay, my work here led to what kind of impact? So whether it's people served, satisfaction improved, right? Just what were the metrics, if not money, for how they measured impact? So again, because a lot of people saying, I'm from DC also, like nonprofit government, I can't do this. I'm like, you actually can maybe even do it better. A lot of this stuff is public. I mean, all of it's public record too. Put yourself in the shoes though, not of you, of your boss or of the president. How did they defend their actions of why they chose to deploy resources in the way they did? They're beholden to people, like I said, taxpayers, funders, etc. So I think you, in many ways, have a, quote, easier job to explain your impact and quantify it. It's just not going to be with dollar signs. Hopefully that was helpful and inspiring for those who are like, I'm stuck. I'm like, oh, no, you're so close to being unstuck if you look at it in a different way. But yes, I put all those links, by the way, all those links of those free resources plus my LinkedIn, and I'll make sure the slides get over to Shannon as well, because I know there was a lot here. And thank you, Elaine. Thank you. So much to cover.
Thank you, Claire. You spoke rapidly. You sounded like you were about at 1.5 if you were listening to a podcast. But it was all very clear and very succinct, and I can't thank you enough. And like I said in an email, both Kathy and I were so excited to have you on today. So thank you.
Really appreciate you. Appreciate all of
We
you.
were stunned reading. I remember going to meetings with you at, for Ladies Get Paid in Austin years ago.
Oh my God.
And anyway, so it's wonderful to see how successful you are. The book being published, all of that is just great. And I have seen you on TV or something between now and then as well. But congratulations on your family success, your business success, and we are very grateful that you shared your talent and your time with us this morning.
Success, please. It's like all I can see are the failures. So super appreciate you for saying that. I'm also going to throw in one other, I have a Substack where I bring you inside real coaching sessions. A lot of them are job seekers, because I think too often it's people talk about the outcomes and it's like, well, how did you get there? How did you do the work? So with permission, I get to record. I'm so honored to do this. People allow me to record my coaching sessions with them. They're off camera and anonymous. And then I put it on Substack with the key takeaways. So you can really see inside, someone struggling. Hey, how do I talk about myself at networking events? And we really workshop through her elevator pitch, and you can see that process laid out nicely. And I encourage you to check out my Substack. So thank you all so much. Job seeking is life seeking. Okay. It's really hard. So take care of yourself, and as best you can, find community in it, and you're already doing it because you're here. So I'll let you go. I'm off to coach someone else, and best of luck. You got this. Happy Friday.
Thank you so much.